Welcome everyone to what's going to be an action-packed session on systems. We're going to go through a few things, but firstly I thought maybe I'd... let's start here. So what we're going to go through is basically three things, which is going to have a fair bit of detail behind it. But firstly, what does it mean to systemize a business, and why we want to do that, how we go about doing it, and lastly, how to integrate technology effectively into our businesses. Now, you're not in the, or a few of you aren't in the restaurant business, but if you can relate or think about what a restaurant is like at its peak times, there's a lot going on. And I like to use restaurants as an analogy, or at least as a way to amplify what makes systems so important. If you've ever been in a commercial kitchen at the peak time, there's a lot of things going on. And if things don't run well, it can be chaos. You can either have this situation, or you can have this situation, where it's more calm, collected, a little more organised, a little cleaner, maybe a little less stress. And obviously systems can play a huge part in that. But what else do systems do for us? Why do we want to put systems in our business? What's the payoff?
So you can have a day off.
So you can have a day off. Why? How do systems help you have a day off?
Anybody can just pick it up, follow it, make sense.
Right.
Do it.
Yeah, good one. What were you going to say, Rezi? Same thing, okay. Absolutely, so it enables us to extract the information or the ways of doing things out of our head into the business so other people can do it. What else do systems do?
Reduce mistakes.
Reduces mistakes, absolutely. What else? And how does that make them feel? Empowered and happier, right? Because it's less chaotic and they're not relying on you to be able to tell them how to get something done.
So you train the client.
What was that one?
You train the client.
You train the client. Client learns how things run in your business.
I don't deal with them, I just get things appear in the calendar.
And what else is the benefit for your customers by having good systems in your business? Confidence, right? Understand the process. Why do they feel more confident?
Because they feel reassured that everything is working.
Yeah, would you say, that's all right. I heard a little whisper there. Consistency, right? Yeah, you guys say the same thing. Consistency, right? If you go to a business and you get an experience a certain way one time, and then you go another time and it's a little bit different, maybe you get away with it, but it breeds that little bit of uncertainty. And then if you repeat that consistently, all of a sudden someone's not sure what they're going to get when they come to your business. So systems, they free your time up. They reduce your stress because other people know how to do things. They can do them consistently, which makes them happy because they know what's going on. It makes your customers happy because they're getting a consistent output as well. And it reduces errors, so probably increases efficiency and makes you more profitable. There's one last thing that systems do for your business that is super important.
To duplicate and grow bigger.
Well, it allows scalability. That's not what I was thinking, but you're right. Absolutely, it allows scalability. For sure.
It can form a good part of your sale that when you think of the wording, when you pass that business on, it actually comes with systems, processes, everything's in place so they can just take that business
100%.
as is ready.
Increases the value of your business, for sales. So if you've got two businesses that are doing exactly the same amount in sales, same amount of profitability, but one requires the owner to be there every single day to make sure it runs well, and one has a level of redundancy around the owner, this one is going to be more valuable. You're going to increase the multiple of what your business is worth. And a viewpoint to have, regardless of where you currently are in your business, is always to be thinking about selling it. One day this business is going to be for sale. So systemizing your business and putting the things in place to enable it to run smoother is going to give you benefit in the short term by freeing your time up and doing all those other things that we said. But in the long term, when you decide the day is the day to sell, it's set up and it's going to be running more effectively, which makes it more valuable to a buyer. Now, to stick with our analogy of the restaurant or cooking, if we think about a system, it's kind of like a recipe. So if you think about a recipe, if you've ever bought a cookbook and cooked from a recipe, odds are you probably didn't meet the person that wrote the recipe and they probably weren't there to guide you through it. You just either watched a video or you read something that gave you all the instructions, told you roughly how long it was going to take, gave you the methodology, gave you the ingredients, and probably told you how difficult it was going to be. So hopefully you matched your skill up. You didn't try the advanced recipe with your basic skills, right? You matched it up, and you can pretty much replicate what someone possibly on the other side of the world had created. And that's, a bit of a microcosm or an analogy on what we're looking to do with systems. Now, I do also want to bust a couple of myths early on. Sometimes there is this air of panacea around systems, and this belief that, if we have the right systems running our business, we can go and, sit on the beach and drink margaritas and sail off into the sunset. And I don't believe that to be true. I believe that for most business owners, you still need to be engaged in your business and you still need to know what's going on. But the systems do all those things that we have spoken about. And it doesn't mean, at different stages of your business requires different levels of systemization. A way to think about it is, right, as a business grows, down the bottom here when you're a junior business, if this represents a level of systems in your business, systems and scalability, this side over here represents flexibility. Right, the more structured and systemized your business is, you're probably there's an opportunity cost of flexibility. And when you're quite small in your business, you don't want to have a high level of structure and rigidity, because part of your competitive advantage probably is that agility. And also sometimes systems can create an overhead from a efficiency point of view if you've got too much structure in place at an early stage, and it can actually bog you down versus give you the freedom to be able to grow your business and be agile to making changes you need to make, or to be agile to what your customers need. So that's just something to keep in mind. And obviously there's different parts of the business that can benefit more from systems. Like if, the admin side, for instance, there's probably a high degree of systemization that can be applied to admin at an early stage. But if you've got something more like on the customer service side, maybe it does require a little bit more agility in the early days. So just sort of think about that and keep that in context as we're talking about this stuff. Also, systems are a piece of the puzzle in terms of all the other things we're talking about. So we talked about profit model at the start, we talked about marketing, we talked about sales, we're going to talk about team. So this is just one little element that from today, you should be able to look at it and go, I can see some areas where investing some time and effort is going to be worthwhile in that, but you might be at the stage where you don't need to look at this stuff at all. Like you should be investing time in marketing or in your profit model or some other area of the business. So take it all in context. So 8 steps to systemizing your business. And we're going to go through each of these in a bit of detail, but I want to give you sort of the overview to start with. We start with your big picture workflow, which is really, and I'm going to give you some examples of this, but it's understanding exactly that at a big picture, how do things work in your business. And the reason why this is important is because before we get into the sort of the micro level of systems, is because it can help you think through how things do work in the business and where the focus should be to get a little more detail around your systems. It's also a big picture workflow is super helpful for communicating to everyone in the business how things work. Because if you've got multiple people in your business, they're not always involved in all aspects of the business, but having an understanding of different aspects of the business can help increase efficiency. The other big picture component that we want to have in place is the org chart. So the workflow is the how do things work, and the org chart is the who does what, combined with position contracts. Position contracts are not job descriptions. Position contracts talk about the top 3 to 5 accountabilities and responsibilities for every position that tie into the workflow. Number 4, the 80-20. So once we've got our big picture, we again come back to our fantastic 80-20 principle. What's the 80-20 principle? So 20% of our inputs,
Contributes to 20% of our output.
80% of our outputs. So the minority of inputs affect the majority of outputs. And we're going to apply that to systems, because not all of your systems in your business are equal. There are some that are way more important than others. And then once we've done all that, we can get down to the specifics of designing systems, like specific systems. I'm going to walk you through some examples and methodologies and ways to think about that. Technology is going to play a part of that. How do we bring technology in? And then review. Once we've sort of got that picture in place, it's an ongoing process of review, refine, and evolve. So, rarely, if you put a system in place at this stage of growth, it's very rare that same system is going to work at this stage of growth. You have to keep changing as you go. And lastly is the training part, right? Obviously, people are critical to making sure our systems work well. All right, now, before I go to the big picture workflow, has anyone done a big picture workflow in their business? Or maybe I'll give you an example, and that might be more helpful. So this business is, probably like it's a bit of a general workflow, but more like make a trade business. People are going off site to go and complete a job. But it starts up the top here. We've got the inquiry comes in, so you can't see the colours that well, but this section here is all blue, this one's all purple, and this one's all green, and that represents parts of the business. So the blue area is sales. So the inquiry comes in, they book the appointment to go out and have a look, they do the sales call, provide a quote, follow up the quote, and then hopefully that turns into a go-ahead. They go ahead, they generate a work order. From the work order, the job goes to production, they schedule the job, they order the materials come in, and so on. I mean, you can see how it flows here. And things then at different stages come back to the admin side, right then back to the sales side. So there's not a whole lot of detail in this stage, but when you're talking to the guys loading the stuff on the truck, and you're letting them know, okay, back down here we're going to be asking for a testimonial, it helps them see the connection of how their work affects other parts of the business. And when you've got something like this, it can be a very simple and quick way to show someone, help someone understand how the whole business works, how the flow works completely. Versus you sitting there and talking someone through, well, you might still talk through this, but picture paints 1,000 words. And to remind you, for those who were here, that when we talked about sales, we talked about the three major modes of communication. We've got visual, audio, and kinesthetic. Does anyone remember what the percentages were? Yeah, it was 20%, 40, and 40. So, the mistake that a lot of us make is that we use this method here to explain to people how things work and how systems should run. But a lot of the time people just don't get it because they're not audible people. I know I'm one of those. You could show me something like this and I'm going to get it way faster than if you sit there and describe it to me. So this is the starting point. And a great tool for doing this is actually to use sticky notes. So you get a board like this, you get a pad of sticky notes, maybe some different colour sticky notes, and you start writing things on, you put them up here, and then you can move them around on the board, and when you've got it exactly how you think it should be, you take a photo of it and you can either do something like that or whatever format makes sense for you. So I was working with a client of ours who's an architect, and we had him do this at the early stage, and of course he draws things by hand, so he did a nice creative thing by hand, and he just recruited someone, and he was able in a very short amount of time bring them up to speed about how the process works just by sharing this with them. And then they've got obviously a copy there in the work area so people can see it all the time immediately, and can just help alleviate problems. So this is the sales side here in the blue. This is administration, and this one here was production. And you'll see why the colours are helpful in the next slide. I was going to tell you something else, but it slipped my mind. So let's go to the next slide. So this is the big picture workflow. Oh, I was going to say, detail is not important here. You don't want to get down in the weeds on this one. It should be able to fit ideally on one page. Worst case, an A3, so someone can see how it all works. Because you're going to use this big picture to apply the 80-20 to then work out which areas you need to drill down and get into the specifics on. But staying at high level, we then go to our org chart. And our org chart, I mean, this is a very simple one, sort of complementary to the workflow we just saw. So the org chart looks at the major areas of the business, and no names in here right now. You start with a blank slate of not putting names against things, but you just look at the different areas of the business, and usually they look something like this, and you start to fill in the different roles. So you expand it, extrapolate it out, so you've got a box there for every role in the business. Now, a couple of important points when you're doing your org chart, and we're going to have a go at doing one in a second, is that even if you've only got 1, 2 or 3 people, but you've got 16 roles in the business, you still draw the org chart with the 16 roles, just that when you go to put names in there, some people are going to have their name in 4 different boxes. And that becomes really important when we get to the next stage, because we're going to start to look at what are the key accountabilities for each role in the organisation. When you look at the top 3 to 5 accountabilities for each position, when you add all those up, it should cover off everything that needs to be taken care of in the business. So you can apply all the accountabilities somewhere to one of the roles in the business. And then we're going to do 2 org charts. We're going to do one for how the business is today, and then we're going to do one for how the business is going to look when it's finished. And whatever that finished time frame is up to you. You might just do one for a year down the track, or 5 years down the track, or 10 years down the track. But the idea is that you're designing the people structure of your business up front, so you can start to see where you need to hire and what's going to be the next logical thing to do. And that starts to go hand in hand sometimes with the systems you're going to create. If you can see that right now, just say you were in the key operations role and also the key sales role, and you knew you need to get this one off your plate, you're going to quickly go back and say, okay, these are the things here that I've probably got to systemize first. So those things are in place for the next hire that I make. And it can be sequential that way. And you may, if you know you're always going to stay the salesperson, you may never systemize this stuff because it's got little value until the point where you go to sell. Unless you forget lots of stuff, then it might be helpful to systemize it so that you don't forget things.
You expect that your business will always just be one person business?
So great question. And I would still do this, but you probably wouldn't have these 20 people, 16 people down here, right? But if there is a role that you need to play in each of these, it's helpful to still have it there. For the simple point that sometimes when our businesses are small, we see them as small businesses, and then we don't take them as seriously sometimes, and we don't look at the key things that need to be done within the business because we know we just got to do it all. And so there becomes very little structure. Again, you probably wouldn't have as much structure as someone that's got 30 people in their organisation, but you just have a very simple model that says, like we talked the other week about having a marketing meeting, having an operations meeting, and a finance meeting, the same thing applies even if it's just you. So you've got to sit down and talk about those things.
My thing was more like the chart now would be just my name against every role.
Yep.
But in
The future one? Yep.
Still be.
Sure. So you probably wouldn't do a future one.
Anybody, because
Yeah. So there's no need to do a future one. Just as you are now. Yep. Exactly.
Does your organisation chart include those partner services that you might?
It can do, for sure. Yeah, if that is an important part of your workflow particularly, you can see the colours, right? So the colours in the org chart match up to the colours in the workflow. So again, back to the visual thing, you can very quickly see who's doing what. Not names, but just sort of departments. But you can do, like I've had clients that did do, like as they had more people under different sections, they would do different shades of a colour, and that would tie into specific areas in the workflow.
For example, we might have content creators,
Yep.
but they're not employees.
Yep.
They're an important role within our business.
Yep, for sure.
But eventually one day they might become part of our employee structure.
Yeah, 100%. No, I would definitely do that. So yeah, just to repeat it, so you would have your outsourced people or your contractors on the org chart, maybe in a different color or dotted or something, but again, have those accountabilities under there, and that would tie back to what they do in the workflow of the business as well. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so if everyone got a spare bit of paper, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to have a go at an org chart. Does anyone need some paper to draw on? Okay, I want you to have a crack at drawing your org chart as it is today, and then have a go at drawing it as it might be in no names, just the roles. Yep. The org chart. Yep. Yep. So you pick a time frame. It doesn't really matter, but somewhere in the future where you know it might look different, or maybe it'll look the same, but the names will be different. So particularly doing the future exercise, it starts to go or dovetail into your profit model and some of your financial and time goals. So if you are looking to grow your business and make more money from your business, or to have more free time from your business, you need a certain amount of scale likely to do that, depending on what your profit model shows you. But if you work out, okay, to be able to make the amount of money we want to make, we would need to double our sales volume, then you might see, okay, to do that, we probably need 2 extra people. So then you come back to the org chart and have a look at who those people might be. It can help you then understand what your payroll and wages are going to be, that will then feed back into your profit model. So it starts to form a planning tool as well to help you understand that. And same with the time side. If you know that you want to be working less than you're currently working, then probably either you need to be more efficient in what you're doing, or got to get something off your plate. And if you've got to get something off your plate, that probably means getting someone else in. So understanding which role it is that you're going to hire for, and how, again, that affects your profit model. It all ties in together. So once we've got actually probably the last point to make on the org chart, just like the workflow, it's a communication tool, right? As your company grows and you start adding people, if you've got, let's say you start just with you, and then you add one other person, you've got one relationship there. If you add one more person, well, now you've got now 3 relationships. Is there one more I'm missing there? No, that's it. And if you add one more person, it gets exponential in the number of relationships involved. And when I'm talking about relationships, I'm also talking about communication. So the number of people that have got to be communicated to gets exponential if you start looking at the number of connections that are in there. So the importance of having tools in your business that can communicate things easily becomes more and more important. So like being able to communicate to people quickly and easily on who does what and how that ties into the workflow can be very helpful in reducing confusion in a business. So once we've got our org chart, we then want to have position contracts. In position contracts, I'm going to give you a sample here that's up there so you can read it a little clearer. But there's also a download that's going to be available under the video that gives you a full, it's a workbook on how to write position contracts. But maybe take one of those, Michael, and pass them back. I need to take one back. Harry, you want to take one and pass them back? So when most people write, we all hear the word job descriptions, and typically job descriptions end up as a long to-do list of here are all the tasks that you need to do. And that's not always that helpful and can often be overwhelming, and people often look at these documents and then they read them and they go somewhere else, usually the bin, and they never get looked at again. So the difference between a job description and a position contract is a contract should have a short number of things that someone's accountable for. So on that first page there, you'll see on the left-hand side is the description of the accountabilities, and just to the right of it would give a measure of, or how that person would know if they're doing a good job on that. And under any one of those things on the left-hand side, there's probably numerous tasks that need to be done to be able to achieve that. But more importantly, while we're talking about systems and how consistency and how things get done is important, there should always be a level of room to move in how someone gets the job done. So, to give you a simple example, if you had someone in, let's say, cleaning this place here, and you said, listen, make the floor, so make sure you sweep the floor, that could be the job, but someone could sweep the floor and do a horrible job. But if you said, okay, make the floor clean enough to eat off, and you gave them a picture of how you want it done, I don't really care how you do it, just make it look like this. So you focus on the outcomes versus the how you actually get something done. Obviously that can be in contrast or in conflict a little bit with consistency in doing things a certain way to make the business run right, but there's that balance point. But just with position contracts, this is going to tie in also when in next week's session, when we're talking about team and we're talking about how to give people reviews and feedback. And the system I'm going to walk you through is called a feed forward system, which ties in exactly with what's on the position contract. And it's a much simpler conversation about less things versus all the detail. Or if you do have to talk about the detail because something's not working right, it could come back up to one of these higher level items that's on the position contract. But the goal is, this one, how many items are on that person's position contract? 7 or something is there on that page 1? 6? Yeah, 6 is probably getting close to the limit. Maybe 7's the limit. If you start to get 12 things on there, you might want to see how I can condense it up to be less things. So, because you got to think about what someone can focus on. If you've got a long list of things that someone's accountable for, they're never going to remember them. But if you've got a short number that can sort of be up a higher level than all the detail ones, then it encompasses everything. It's easier to wrap your head around. No, I'm accountable to make sure customers are happy. All right.
You should be with contract of employment after they start working.
Before. You write the position contract before you recruit someone.
Okay.
Yep.
But when you do you give it to them? Do you give it part of the job description? Or do you include it?
No job description.
No job description.
That's it.
That's it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And even,
Description don't really say much.
what's that?
Job description don't really tell you much actually.
Well, it depends. It's even position contract, it's sort of semantics on what you want to call it. I guess what's in it is most important, I think anyway. I think too much detail and they don't get looked at. Like I've even got clients that I show them that and they're like, their head explodes. And so all we do is we go to the org chart and we just put bullet points under each role. Okay, what are the key things that person has to deliver on? And that in itself is way better than having nothing or having too much detail, I think anyway. Simplicity is always more powerful than complexity, just because people understand it. That's what we're trying to get at. So with each, so you raise an important point. When do we do it? We do them as you need to. Like if you've got 50 people in your organisation now, don't go out tomorrow and write 50 position contracts, but there might be some that are more important than others. If you're hiring would be a good example of that. That's where you might start. But always think to start up higher than lower for the simple notion of we want to make sure we're walking the talk. So you don't want to hold someone else accountable to certain things when it's all wishy-washy with what you're doing up in the ivory tower.
Quite funny because when you're a small business, you might rope in friends or family to help out.
Right.
And if I go to my husband and say, hey, look.
Your husband will love it, trust me, yeah.
What could help us position contract for
Position contracts, simple as possible. You'll see on the back, there's a few other elements in there around skills and so forth. That's just to help in the recruiting side more than anything. The most important part of that document is on the front page. And again, there'll be templates available for download to do those. So we've got our big picture workflow. We've got our org chart, they sort of go together. We've got some now position contracts in place. So now we can start looking at the more individual systems within a business. And the first thing we want to do, of course, is our 80-20 rule, which as we all know means that 20% of our systems will probably account for 80% of our efficiency, and likewise 20% of our systems will probably be responsible for 80% of our mistakes. So basically we're looking for where are we going to get the biggest bang for our buck in terms of how we do things. A client of mine who actually I R&D'd or robbed and duplicated that position contract from, they're an arborist company, and when I started working with them, the owner was, pretty stressed and doing a lot of things. And one of the things we did is we looked at where most of the stress was coming from, and it was him doing the scheduling. So back to here, he was doing this part here. But the problem was he didn't have a system in place for it. It was all up in his head. He had a crew of about 7 people, and things are moving all the time. So he was good at it, but no one else knew what was going on, and he was pretty stressed and overwhelmed. So we very quickly, looking at all the systems in the business, it wasn't hard to work out. That was the pinch point for them. So that's where we spent the time and invested the effort to fix it. And you'll find the same is with your business. You don't need to systemize everything. There's probably just a handful of things that are going to make the biggest difference, bring the most clarity, reduce the most mistakes, and that's where you want to start. Prioritize. Okay, looking at specific systems. Like we did with the big picture workflow, you want to start with your sticky notes and do a micro workflow that might look something like this as an example. So this is an example of a purchase ordering system. It overlaps a little bit with the job that comes in, but then, list of materials gets printed, stock levels get checked, order stock is required, and there's a whole process for processing the order and when it comes in, what happens if it's complete or incomplete. So this again is, just an overview of a more specific system. So the benefit of one of these, of doing these, even if it doesn't get used ongoing, is to bring actual clarity to what needs to happen and make sure you've got the right things in place in terms of paperwork or technology for this system to run. Again, it can be a great communication tool when you've got to bring someone in or help someone understand how to run the purchase ordering and processing system, right? You could have a whole written out procedure, but again, my experience with those is they normally sit on the shelf and gather dust. Much better to have this workflow sitting right next to where that person is that's running that system. And if you need specific checklists or forms or whatever it is to support this, then that's the way you go ahead and start developing those. But if you come back to your big picture, if you've identified that this is one of your 80-20, then this is the next step to take, is a more micro level of the workflow. You might find that's enough. Yep, that's all we need to do for that one. Or you might say, no, now we need some videos to supplement how this gets done properly. Or you need a checklist that goes on, this. There might be a bit of paper here that gets printed out with that becomes a physical checklist that's got to follow something around. I think there is I'm going to talk about technology, which obviously is around not using paper, but I think there's a real role for paper still in some systems. Our family business in printing, we have a system where when the job gets generated, the administration prints out 5 different paper tickets that go down to production. They go on a specific spot in production, and production knows as soon as something's in there, that's something to take action on. It becomes a trigger point for some action to be taken. Sometimes if there aren't trigger points built into a system or cues that indicate to someone that we've got to do something with this, that's when balls get dropped. Paper I think can still play a role. Then, talked about trigger points. What are the trigger points you build into the system so someone knows they've got to do something? And technology can be great for that, but as I said, paper can be good as well. The details, what do we need? Do we need a form? Do we need a checklist? What needs to support the system so that it can run smoothly and everyone's got the information, or the information is captured somewhere for historical purposes? And lastly, how does it integrate with other systems? So I'll give you another example. You won't be able to read this, but I'll talk you through it. This is actually one of our systems that we follow when we onboard a new client. And this one is run completely by software, so there's no paper involved. And it's the software that creates the triggers. So this might be too much for a lot of businesses, but I wanted to show it to you just to show you what systems can do, because this one saves us a lot of time and prevents a lot of mistakes. So when a new client comes on board, we simply fill out a form that happens online on the software and press a button, and that triggers a whole lot of admin tasks to happen. and sends off a confirmation email to make sure that the client's email is double opted in, which improves our email deliverability. Once these admin tasks are done, which is a little checkbox here, that tells the system to do the next step. And that sends an email to the new client that has a list of things. It's a pre-written email, but walks them through some of the logistics about us getting up and running, and also creates some other steps for Melina, who then also sends an email. A bunch of things happen anyway. A lot of different things happen that the software triggers us and reminds us of. It then goes in and sends those details to the accounting system, either to Canada or Australia, depending on what was filled in the form. So there's no double entry. Like, the accounting system is not directly linked to this system, but we use another piece of software, which I'm going to show you, that can do that automatically. So you want to think about how to eliminate double entry in your business, because double entry wastes time and creates mistakes. And then also it feeds into our C&E, critical non-essential workflow, which is around sending handwritten cards, and also feeds into another system that runs our Net Promoter Score system, which is a way of getting feedback for clients on how we're doing. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on there, but we don't do any of it. Like, we've set it up so it just runs itself. It tells us when we have to do something, we do it. Like, if I got to write a card, it tells me when I got to write the card. It happens after 3 months, happens after 6 months, and happens after 6 months after that. And every 6 months I get a little trigger to send a card, and it gives me a little prompt of what to write in the card. So I have to think about it.
What's the software name?
That's Infusionsoft. Yeah. But there's lots of them out there now that do it. I'm getting a bit ahead of ourselves on the technology side, but I want to just help you understand how triggers can work and what a paper system versus a paperless system might look like. Anyway, so that's one example, and we've got a bunch of those that help run our business. I might pause here, I think, and I thought we might just take a minute to have a bite to eat. We've got some fresh sandwiches at the back. Let's take a minute to say hello to some other people, and let's say 10 minutes, and we'll come back and keep going. Okay, now that I've given you a brain aneurysm with this thing on the screen, one other thing that could be helpful for you, excuse the photo, that's Melina's work. There's a video we've got on our website called what does it say? How to create systems you'll actually use with Trello. So Trello is another, I'm not getting into the technology part yet, but it's a place where we keep a lot of our systems because you can create, all good. It's a great place to create templates for stuff. So for an example is, I don't know about you, but every month there are certain things that I need to make sure that I do from an administrative point of view. And there's certain times of the month when they have to be done, like paying credit cards and all that sort of stuff. So I've created a monthly checklist for myself that I just copy each month and say, this is March's checklist. And it says on week 1, here's what you got to do. And so every time I go sit down and do my admin stuff, I sit down, I just look at week 1, I just check those things off. So I don't have to remember or think about these things. I don't have reminders popping up everywhere. I've just created a simple checklist that runs on a monthly schedule. And so I use Trello for that. I walk through that in the video. So it can be helpful for some things in the business. So if we're looking at specific systems in a business, what are those systems? What might they be? Let's start a bit of a master list here. I've got a master list too I'll share with you, but let's see. What are some systems that you might want to have in your business? What are the areas of your business that need systemizing? How you do a job. Okay, so doing a project. Okay, what else?
How to pay bills.
Paying bills. Let's call that accounts payable. What's the other half of that?
How about accounts receivable?
Accounts receivable. What else?
Client engagement.
Client engagement. Engage. A retention plan. Retention system. Direct marketing. The operations, yeah. I'm going to put that up under here. Operations. social media. What else? Maintenance. Good, a really good one to Systemize. Yep. Yep, for sure. Yeah, IT, like updating, maintaining. Yeah, cool. What else? Recruitment. Sales process. Supervision. Vision. I'll put reviews under that as well, if that's all right. Payroll. What else?
How about government liaison?
Government liaison. What else? Like staff reviews? Oh, customer reviews? Yep. Client reviews. What was that one? Heard another one. Referrals. Onboarding of clients and staff. Yep. Yep. Staff. Okay, let's see what I had. I think you got most of them. So I had purchasing, receiving, scheduling, staff rostering, accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, customer C&E. C&Es with the critical non-essentials, so the things you do to wow your customers. That's the delivering, the doing a project operations, quoting, estimating, customer onboarding, staff recruiting, staff onboarding, staff coaching reviews, maintenance, sales process, customer complaints, but you guys don't get any customer complaints, do you? So don't need a process for that one, and safety processes. So there could be others, but I thought it's a sort of a start there. But again, we've got to remember the 80-20. The 80-20 is that there's going to be 20% of those that are going to give you a biggest bang for your buck with either saving you time or making you more efficient. There's another aspect to the 80-20 which I was reminded of having a chat to Julian there at the break, that there are some things in a business that can't be systemized. So 80% we can probably systemize, and because it's repetition, it's just the same thing happening over and over. But there's 20% here that we have to humanize. That requires skill, requires intuition, requires judgment, and we can't always create systems around that. You know, Julian was talking about how does he create a system around when to pick the grapes, and he doesn't even know how he does it. He just sort of knows that now's the right time to get it done. So you can't always create a system around things. So just keep that in mind as well. I think it's good context. A couple of further reading for you, for those that love to dive into it. There's 3 that I would recommend on creating systems. You've probably heard of this one, The E-Myth. It's probably one of the most common small business books out there. And it is a great book. I think that it's got lots of good stuff and it gives you good frameworks to think about. It's not very prescriptive though. It doesn't give you sort of tactical tools on how to do things. And one of the dangers with the E-Myth, I feel it does paint this panacea that systems are the answer to everything. So I think you've got to take it in context, but it is a good book. I do encourage people to read it. Systemology is a new one that's just come out. He's an Australian guy out of Melbourne. He's related, not related by blood to Michael Gerber, but through relationship. And it's just he is a little more prescriptive and gives you tactical ways to go about creating your systems, so that can be a good resource. And the last one you can't read too well there, it's called the Checklist Manifesto. It's a great read. And I can never pronounce the author's name. Atul Gawande is a medical surgeon, and she, I believe, is pretty high up in the World Health Organization. I'm probably getting this all wrong, but was very instrumental in implementing some very simple checklists in hospitals that resulted in dramatic decrease in error rates. And talks about some of the challenges getting the team around to use them, particularly doctors and their egos around using a very simple checklist, but those that she was able to get on board, you know, the results speak for themselves, and gives a really good cross-section on different industries, from construction to aviation, where systems are obviously well embedded. But yeah, good read, very good read. Okay, let's take a look at technology. So is anyone using software to run their businesses now? Yep, some degree. You know, the great thing about technology is that it's come down so much in price. Like before, what was only available to massive big businesses is now really affordable to the smallest of businesses.
It's free. I don't pay for any of my IT software.
Okay, that's awesome. I feel like it went through this phase where, I mean, you can certainly still get a lot of free plans, but I think the price points have actually started to come back up because a lot of them realised they weren't making any money. And they realised that was, you know, investors are throwing all this money at these software companies, but then realised that profitability was also important. So we've seen prices come up a little bit, but it's still very affordable for what it can do. Like you can get efficiencies out of software that can save the hiring of an employee for like a couple of $100 a month. So it can absolutely pay off. But a few things to keep in mind is, and I'm going to give you sort of the areas you might want to think about implementing technology in your business, but number one, that's unlikely to do everything. And my favorite 80-20 there is know the 20% of things that it has to do extremely well, and get really clear on that. So before you implement, and particularly I'm probably talking about your operational software. Like for most businesses, there's a custom bit of software that helps you run the operations side of your business, and that's normally the most tailored part of software. So you want to, when you're thinking about all the things that you would like it to do, categorize it usually in three ways. You know, there's the A's that are the must-haves. It must be able to do this. The B, it would be super handy if it could do this. And the last one is the nice to haves. Gee, it'd be really cool if it could do this, but you know, we could live with it without. And you'll generally find, unless you've got some crazy ideas, you'll generally find, you know, most systems that can do these two things out there, but you certainly want to be clear on this because, you know, it's easy to put everything you want into one bucket and try and find something that can do it all. I mean, maybe there is, but my experience is that there's normally some things you have to go without, or some things it doesn't do as well. It's a bit clunky around here, so you've got to sort of, you know, be willing to compromise a little bit. And then another consideration is its integratability, or how well it plays with other systems, because it probably doesn't do everything, and if it does, it probably doesn't do everything well. You want to make sure it can talk to other systems. For example, your accounting system, right? Accounting systems used to sit at the middle of the technology piece. Now I don't think they do. I think they sit off to the side. I think the CRM and the operations software, CRM meaning customer relationship management, but where are your customer details and customer interactions sit? That's usually the hub piece of software in your business. So maybe I'll skip forward to this one here. So you've got your CRM that sits in the middle. As I was saying, so if you're a trades business, it keeps track of all your schedule. If you're a winemaker, it keeps track of all your batches possibly, or the information you need. If you're a printing company, it does your quoting and estimating for you and keeps track of production schedules. Or if you're a accommodation place, it takes the bookings online and manages customer details. It's that kind of thing. So get that one right first, because it's normally the one that's going to save you the most time, and it's going to be the most bespoke to your needs. Versus something like accounting, that is the next one to go up. Accounting is more general. Like most accounting systems do the same thing, but some are a little better than others. I'm a big Xero fan, but a lot of people love MyOb, or even I've put a couple other ones like FreshBooks and Wave. Wave's a free one, but doesn't have a lot of features. So that one goes next, and you absolutely want these two to speak to each other. So you might do a lot of your invoicing out of this one, but you want to push that information across to your accounting software so you're not doing any double entry. That's really important. Then the next one that is probably of importance for most businesses is communications. This one may interact or not, but you think if you're sending emails to customers and you're using Outlook and it doesn't speak to your operations software, then when you're in your operations software looking at your customer history or trying to find out details, you've got to be flipped back to your email program, or when you get a new customer in there, you then got to enter their details again in Outlook. And it's just this double handling and information in different places that can cause a lot of inefficiency in the business. With some thought, it's easy to map out a picture that makes them all talk to each other and just saves you a bunch of time. Then your website, like if you're taking particularly online orders or online inquiries, super helpful if that feeds straight into your CRM software. Once again, saving double entry. And if you've got any kind of automation that goes on in your CRM software, you can have follow-ups automatically triggered or whatnot. Just get a lot of extra features. Then the marketing side. So if you're doing any kind of email marketing or you're keeping a database that you want to keep in touch with, then you ideally want to have these all connected. If you've got to take your customer details out of your operations system, put it into your accounting, put it into your email program, put into your email marketing program, like that's just a nightmare. You're keeping 5 different databases, so you absolutely want to avoid that. And then sales, a lot of the time this will get done in here, but sometimes not. Sometimes you need something outside. Depends on the sales needs of your business. If you have a sales process and you're managing different inquiries that need follow-up at different stages and you've got quotes going on that are going to be followed up on, then software for that's going to be really important. And lastly, any kind of outside integration you might need, say with Australia Post or with third-party logistics companies. Sometimes there are other systems that you need to be able to tie into. So like we did the big picture on your workflow at the start, it's really helpful to do the big picture on what all the technology systems are in your business to work out how they all should work or what the best options are going to look like. It's not always possible to get them all talking to each other. But once again, 80-20, you might say, okay, we can live with the email being separate, but if we can get all the rest to talk to each other, that's going to be okay. And these systems are getting, like the integratability of all these systems is continually improving, as people get better and better. I'm just going to flip back to the last slide. So a few things you want to think about is usually cloud-based is better. Simply from an interconnectability point of view, some people have security concerns over cloud-based. That's a bit of a personal thing. I love cloud-based because of the handiness of it, and having some level of mobile app is also super handy. Unless you're at the desk all day, every day, sometimes you're out and about doing something. It's great to be able to look up your customer details or process an invoice or send an email off from your phone. It's going to log back to your system. If you do make a lot of phone calls, like the amount of time you save by having customer details go straight from your CRM into your phone, it sounds like a small thing, but it can just save you a bunch of time to not have to do the double entry or go and look up information when it may or may not be convenient. So flipping back to this one, there is, if you can't get, point I glossed over on that last slide was an open API. So if you're dealing with cloud-based software, then looking for software solutions that have what's called an open API. API is application program interface. What it really means is they've left some bits open on their software that allows you to speak to it. And there's a piece of software or a service called Zapier, which connects all these things. So for some reason, if you couldn't get your email program here to link up to here, Zapier, if both of these have an open API, like Gmail has an open API, I can do things like when a new customer is created here, also send it to Gmail, send all the details. This is how, with the one I showed you before where I got a new client and it got sent to Xero, that's how I made that happen through Zapier. A trigger happens in here, being when you save a new customer, Zapier is connected and says, oh, you've just put a new customer in. And you tell it what to send and where to send it, and it sends it to wherever you want to send it. And Zapier is a great tool. I mean, you do need to be a little savvy to use it, but it is drag and drop. Like, it's not coding in any way, shape or form. But one of the downsides of using something like Zapier is that sometimes the software will make a change and they don't know who's connected to it or what you've got connected, and all of a sudden your connection can be broken. You have to go in and change it. So it's not a foolproof system. Much better if you can get a native system, like a native integration. For instance, let's say if you're a trade and you're using something like ServiceMate. ServiceMate links in directly with Xero. Or when I was looking for software for our gymnastics business, one of the things I made sure I got was this integration with Xero. I didn't want to have any double handling. So when we do all our invoicing through the gymnastics software, that all the bookings happen through there, and all the data gets pushed automatically to Xero. So there's no double entry there. So that's a native integration. That will always work. Unless if there's a break, the software people will fix it. They'll fix it, not me. So that's a good distinction to make. So open APIs are important. And then there's the reporting side. Now, Clipfolio is just one service of many, but I put it up there just to remind me to talk about it. Sometimes you want to be able to get data out of your systems. And let's say, for example, you've got your email campaigns, you've got a sales software, you've got your accounting, obviously, and you've got your operations software. You might need to get data out of different services. You might want to know what's our open rates in our email, and you've got to go into your MailChimp to work that out and pull up a report. You might want to know what's our conversion rate on our sales. You've got to go into your sales software. You might want to know what's our current lead time on our projects, and that would come from your CRM software. Or you might want to know what were our margins last month, and that's in here. So you've got data in all different places. A service like Clipfolio extracts it all out and puts it on one spot. So it'll take all your different data from all the different data sources, assuming they're cloud-based, and you can create customized dashboards to give you a finger on the pulse on one page. So when you do want to be sitting on the beach sipping your margaritas and your business is running on autopilot on systems, you can log on to your mobile phone and see exactly what's going on from all the different areas of the technology. Yeah, if they're a modern system, cloud-based, this will hook into your Facebook data, it'll hook into your MailChimp data, it'll hook into pretty much anything. Yeah, and there's lots of these out there. Scoro, there's Tableau. Clipfolio is, it's probably one of the more complicated ones, but it enables you to do things like, take our marketing spend from our Xero account and divide it by the number of likes we got on our Facebook page, so we know exactly how much we're paying for every like. You can create all different calculations, whatever's important for you. You might not want to work that one out, but you can. It's very powerful. It's very powerful. And the goal of showing you this is not so much to say, okay, go and do this tomorrow, but to help you understand what is available out there. Because data like this, and there's a couple of key numbers that are very helpful to running most businesses. And if you can extract that easily and have access to it, it can just keep your finger on the pulse. And I was talking about your reticular activating system in the planning one. It helps you be mindful and be thoughtful about what's important in your business. So it's pretty cool stuff if you're a data geek. No? So a point about spreadsheets. I got a little note here. Might have been on the last slide that said that keeping spreadsheets is like using sticky notes. People have a spreadsheet for this and a spreadsheet for that, and no one really understands how to build the spreadsheet or what we're supposed to use it for, and we end up with all these spreadsheets. So, look, spreadsheets are a great starting point, and if you've got nothing else, absolutely, spreadsheets can be awesome. But don't build a CRM, don't build your customer database on a spreadsheet. There's way better solutions that are free. You don't have to pay money for these things if you want to start simple. It's only when you start wanting more functionality you usually got to start paying for it. Like MailChimp, it's got plenty of free levels on that. I don't think Xero's got a free one, has it? No, Xero, they've worked it out. They make you pay. Mm-hmm.
I think it's quite expensive for an entry level.
It is.
It stopped me from doing spreadsheets because Xero
Well, it's fit for purpose too, right? I mean, if it's not too complicated, then absolutely. You know, there's no point paying $60 a month for your accounting if you can do it on a spreadsheet in 5 minutes. You know, that absolutely, whatever it is. All these things are fit for purpose. Like Clipfolio is probably a couple of $100 a month to use. So if your business doesn't justify, I don't know what it is. It might not be that much, but you know, it's got to make sense to use these things. But just knowing the options that are out there can be helpful, because there might be a day when it makes sense. The other point I'll make on the technology side is AI and machine learning. Now you might be thinking there's no way I'm considering AI or machine learning, but like I said at the beginning, these sort of solutions were only ever available. Like if you wanted to do this 15 years ago or 20 years ago, it cost you an absolute bomb to be able to do this, but now you can do it for a couple of $100 a month. AI and machine learning are going the same way. So people, you know, companies like Adobe and so forth are developing systems that are going to be more plug and play. And that's going to start to become important when it comes to customizing your customer experience and being able to do, you know, unique things, which you can already do a little bit through some of these technology systems like Infusionsoft, I told you before. You know, for example, let's say you had people come to your place, Sue, and you knew they came to Beechworth for one of 5 reasons. If you knew what they were, you could identify what they are and send them customized emails that would help them understand, you know, things they can do while they're in town based around their interests. So you start to build a customized experience, and things like AI can help you do that, you know, at a greater level. You know, it's not there yet. It's absolutely not there yet, but it's coming for sure. I'm going to skip off technology, and we're just about to wrap up. Has anyone got any questions around the technology side? Because I know it can be complicated.
Please give me another example of Zapier, because I reckon I was told about it, but it was more about an automated thing that this wife got the roller door to go up. She told Zapier to make the roller door go up at a certain time of the day because she was...
Yeah, it could be. So Zapier talks to a lot of different things. So that would be hooked into some kind of home automation. So, for instance, I use Zapier. I can send a text to my phone. I can send a text to Trello and tell it to do something, and it logs into my Trello board as a thing to do. Or I use it when people fill out a questionnaire for me before we sit down and meet. That's a Google form questionnaire. So Zapier then turns that into a Google Doc, so it's all formatted, and also sends a note to my CRM that says they've filled out the questionnaire and moves them automatically to the next part of the process.
Sort of you scheduling automations.
Yeah, it's a way of automating and reducing double entry, and yeah, automation is the way to think about it.
If you answered an email and pretty much said the same thing every time to customers within a variation, it may do something.
I would probably use something like MailChimp for that, or it depends how automated it was, or I'd be probably looking for your this one to do that.
Yeah, I've got an EDM on my...
Yeah, I'd probably do that one inside that. Yeah. But you know, talking about having all your contacts in your phone, so now I've got the app for my CRM on my phone, but it used to be that when a new contact got added there, I added them to Google Contacts as well, because that's what synchronized with my contacts on my phone. So I would always have the phone numbers of people that are in my CRM on my phone. So that was it. I don't need to, because my CRM now integrates natively with it. So every time I add someone, it just happens automatically. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. It's looking for things of where am I spending time doing something right now that software might be able to eliminate that for me, or what can't I do right now that is annoying that software might be able to do for me.
And you said it was an
Open API. Yeah. Jump on to Zapier.com and you'll get a really quick understanding. Like, it is designed for non-programmers, for everyday people that just want to be able to... Right. Or you can probably pay someone not much money to do it. The downside is, though, if you're getting someone else to do it and one of these breakages does occur, then you get a bit stuck and you might not realize it's broken. Yeah. So it's not foolproof. That doesn't sound that easy to me. Yeah. Yeah.
This is, in one of your earlier, you talked about outsourcing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that this is exactly something
Yeah.
that should be outsourced.
Yeah, absolutely. Depending on what you're good at.
And I've been looking for 2 years and I can't find, I can't tell you how much money I've spent to try and do exactly.
So there's now an industry called cloud integrators, and these are experts, usually industry focused, of people. Because if you go down, or if you said to Jamie, come and help me find some software to run my winery, I don't know how many there are. Is there 10, 15 different options? You got to sit down and go through them all and work it out. There are people who usually niche into industries who know this stuff, and they can not the wine industry.
We have a horrible thing called wet, which is very complicated.
Okay, like this might not be helpful for you, Julian, but if you are, like, say, a printer, if you're a trade, if you're, maybe some, I don't know how to describe it, but I know certainly within trades, like, there are definitely production environments. I've got a couple of contacts of people that specialize in manufacturing, and they know the systems, they know all the add-ons, and they know how to do it. And so they can either tell you, okay, for what they'll do a meeting with you first, understand what you need. They'll say, I think these two options are going to be best for you. And they usually charge you a flat fee to do that, or they say, and you pay me X amount and I'll do it all for you and get it all up and running.
I think this is the hardest part for small business, choosing the right piece of software to do what you need it to do in your business.
Yeah, and that's why I think it can get overwhelming when you look at it all like this. But if you're not close to any of this, then just start with this middle one and come back to this list here and know the 80-20. There's 20% of things that's going to save you a ton of time if it does well. And just start there. And sometimes you'll find that you get into it and you either realize this is awesome and you use it more, or you realize it doesn't quite do what we need, and you can switch. Most of the time you can export your data not too difficultly, particularly if it's just a customer database, and switch to someone else. We just switched to a CRM. It took us a couple of weeks, like we switched over. Well, it wasn't a big deal. Well, we were using Infusionsoft, and we realized there's a whole ton of stuff we weren't using that we were paying for. So we simplified it. Active campaign. Dashboards might be a little off down the track, but they're powerful when you're ready. Okay, so what do you do to implement this stuff?
Jamie, can we just go back to the previous one? Because some of this information that you mentioned you can get from Google Analytics.
Yes.
So without having to spend.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Google Analytics would just be another data source. So my point before was you got to go into MailChimp, then you got to go into your socials, then you got to go into your Google Analytics, and you got to go all these different places to get your data. And depending on what you want to see and how much you want to see and how often you want to see it, maybe that's fine.
This would track KPIs every month from all those different
It's real time. It's real time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So look, for most small businesses, this would probably be overkill to do something like this. But depending on what your vision is and how much you want to grow your business, it can be a super handy thing to have in place. Because one of the challenges as the business grows is keeping your finger on the pulse of what's going on in different areas, because there's a lot to keep track of. So systems help you to keep track of more things with less effort. So it's a form of leverage. Yeah.
It'd be nice if somebody could come into small businesses, really tiny businesses even, and just sort of customise some systems, set them up, get them going, and leave the small business owner with a system that works for their business.
There's pros and cons to that approach. The biggest con is, and the biggest problem with most systems, is that people don't use them. And I've found that sometimes when people set a system up for someone else that doesn't have the underlying skill, or at least understand the principles behind the system, that sometimes it doesn't always get used well. So while I don't think everyone has to be an expert in creating systems, like before we delegate anything, we need a base level of competency. So I think there can be value, not in necessarily being experts on the technology. I agree, the technology stuff can be next level and it can be complicated, but you don't have to, like, with all of these systems and all automation, the rule is you do it manually first. Do it manually and inefficiently first and make sure it's working properly, and then automate it and make it more efficient. So if you've got a systems mindset and you think that way, which is normally the biggest stumbling block for most small businesses because they don't have a systems mindset. They just jump in, they're doing it by spinning the plates and juggling the balls, and that's how they keep their business running. So the first step is to how can I stop spinning the plates and get other people to spin the plates and have the systems for them to spin the plates? And then once they're doing that, how can we get more efficiency through the leverage of technology? Yeah, because most systems are not that complicated to do them manually, not that complicated to set up. It's the workflows I showed before. I mean, if you just did that for a start, most small businesses would get more efficient through that. I firmly believe. What's that?
Getting the most out of that system.
Yeah, because if you had no systems and then you implemented all this stuff tomorrow, it just wouldn't get used or wouldn't get used to the right level. So it's, I think there's value in starting very basic.
This is having helped a couple of charities in the UK to do this, to set up the system, go in and set them up for them, is that they, once I left, they didn't use it because they didn't have ownership
Yeah,
of the system.
Yeah.
And they go back to their old way of doing it,
Yeah.
which was more time consuming. So while they're, it's like when you buy a software, even when you buy Office, Microsoft Office, you get your code and you download it and you think that's it, it's going to work. But actually you need to still tailor it to your needs, to what you need to do. And that's with any bit of software you need to have to know what you want to do.
It takes work. It takes some work. Yeah. I know the clients that have had the most success with systemizing their businesses are those that have engaged their team and got the team to help develop the systems. Because there is that buy-in and you've got input from the people that are actually doing the work. So, that's the cultural piece behind this, the people side.
It doesn't, you need to go back to the paper.
Yeah,
Because like I had
Absolutely.
the dog's details on my phone. My husband is looking after doggies. He's not that minded. So we go back to index card, one for each dog. And all the information are there.
right. Well, whatever system works,
Yeah,
right?
but-
Yeah. The flip side of that is I got a client that runs a sales team across Canada and they were upgrading their system and he took a very much, if you don't use it, you're out philosophy. Because he knew it was critical for them to run the business. And if you weren't using it to a certain standard, you're gone because this is a core part of the business. So, there's different ways to approach it and different ways to think about it, but it's all sort of situation specific. But yeah, look, it's easy to get caught up with the shiny lights of the software. Just come back to keep it simple to start with and get it working well manually. And then you can sort of put it on turbocharge with the technology. Okay, wrapping up actions. So stuff we've already gone over, but drawing out the big picture workflow, that's definitely the starting point. And your org chart, which you've all made a start on, the beginning, the current one and the future one. Then look at your big picture and determine your 80-20, which of the systems are going to give us the biggest bang for our buck by getting in place. High level position contracts, top 3 to 5 points of accountability for each role on the org chart. And prioritize technology. So planning for the future, make sure things integrate and grow them over time. Start small and grow them as you go. So like I said at the beginning, that a system that's working well down here probably won't work well up here. So you got to be, know when a system's sort of been outgrown and evolve with it. Great, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out. Hopefully it gives you a few things to work on to buy some time, get more consistency and a more valuable business. Awesome. Thank you.